Okay, once again, a formal welcome to all of you on this webinar on operationalizing AI lessons learned from Melissa's journey from the team of one to all company. I'll give a detailed introduction about Melissa in the coming slides. And we're doing this in collaboration with BrowserStack, who are our annual sponsor for all our community events and famous sponsor for all our conferences. It's due to companies like BrowserStack that we're able to do so many of these events at such scale with consistency. Here is a quick video about them. Yeah, that's about them. Then about Test Tribe. Test Tribe is, as most of you know, and as some of you who are new here, we are the world's largest software testing community and turned into a tech platform. Uh, we started in 2018 with a mission to give testing craft the glory it deserves, which we believe can happen when we co-create with all of you together smarter, prouder, and more confident testers. We take pride in solving for unique upskilling and growth for global testing professionals through our unique offerings like expert courses, memberships, cohorts, and a bunch of other offerings. We have done close to 430 plus events with conferences, hackathons, meetups from all over the world. And we have a global footprint now, and we intend to provide life-altering growth to every single testing professional on the planet through community and technology. We are doing a bootcamp on agentic AI for testers. So if you're keen, my team will put up a form and you can sign up for it. Coming to Melissa, Melissa now serves as head of technology at Campminder. She's highly experienced in the fields of quality testing engineering. She's a renowned speaker. Uh, we are lucky to have have her speak at a bunch of our other events also, like our conference districts. And she focuses on leadership, AI, Agile Enablement, quality and test engineering. She has over 20 years of experience and she has established herself as a seasoned professional, actively contributing to the best of testing practices in the industry and working towards evolving them. And today we are going to talk on operationalizing AI with Melissa. So I'll call Melissa on stage now.
Hello. All right. I'm assuming everyone can see my screen here. Everything look good on your end?
Yes, people should be able to see your screen now. Yeah.
Great. Okay, great. Just want to make sure. Okay. All right. So what we're going to be talking about today, by the way, this is brand new content. I have been thinking about this topic for almost 2 years now. There are plenty of thought leaders and folks that are talking about specific AI tooling and approaches that they've used. I felt that there was a little bit of a need on how do we operationalize and enable the adoption of AI tooling, and more specifically, the kind of the culture and the and the approach of bringing in AI as a culture shift in companies. So as my bio stated, I am the head of technology operations and enablement now. We are doing a rebranding of our department at the moment. So the reason why there's now operations in my title is because we realize that there is a major component of enabling technology tooling, whether that's AI specific or other specific areas of technology there. And the key missing part was to be able to first operationalize new offerings or new services or new additions into the technology organization as well as the rest of the company. And that was a really key part in order to enable individuals or teams to then kind of take on the responsibility and the accountability on their own. So what this talk really focuses on is our journey from about 2 years ago, where we started with a team of one to full company adoption within our AI enablement and what we're calling our AI forward company goal. So I'm going to walk you through that a little bit. So as I mentioned, my role is as the head of technology operations and enablement. There are 3 distinct practices in that department. Number 1, of course, is our AI function, our AI ops and enablement. The other function and practice is our Agile component. We went through for the last 18 months or so a transformation into Agile and creating kind of unique playbooks that help with our company's unique needs and the way that our culture and our teams have originally look at solutioning and delivery, and we build unique playbooks that account for those, but that also follow the industry standard around agile transformation and agile frameworks. And then the third practice, which if you've heard me before, near and dear to my heart, is our quality/test engineering practice. So all 3 of those practices roll under technology operations and enablement. For this talk, we're going to talk about how our AI team of one operationalized to full company adoption, walk through that journey. So let's give a little bit of background. Where did we start? So 2 years ago, mainly it started with questions. Those questions were, was AI disruptive enough in our industry to invest? As mentioned in my bio, I work for a company called Campminder. We provide software solutions for camps in the United States and now looking at a global presence there. So was AI disruptive enough in that specific industry where we wanted to invest, even if that was a small amount? Was there a way to dedicate capacity for folks to have the time and effort without needing to either interrupt planned or committed work, or that caused folks to need to work more or longer hours in order to accommodate that? Who else was doing this in the company, in our community of camps, or in the wider industry, technology industry? So and then of course, how do we make progress? And this was a really interesting challenge that we had at the time 2 years ago. We did not have a fully staffed product team, and most of our work, if the high majority of our work, was initiated via our product teams, via strategy and other ways of planning for either quarterly or yearly delivery of work. And at the time, we did not have a fully staffed product team. So AI was not at the forefront of delivering solutions for our customers. And so all 4 of these questions were what anchored us to how we started our journey with a team of one. And that dedicated one was somebody who was transitioning from their role into a staggered or kind of an off hours role in here. And we wanted to make sure that this person had some time and dedicated to both thought leadership and expertise. So one thing that we did is that we disrupted the conventional time. This person, once we got the initial investment of having this person really focus on understanding where the needs are, not only in the industry, staying at the forefront and really plugging into those companies and folks who were thinking about and implementing AI in a wide scale practice, we knew that there was going to need to be dedicated time. So we disrupted our conventional time. We were able to work off hours for some part of that day. And that allowed this person to do really deep research, and they had autonomy on looking at tools, looking at different approaches, and then again, plugging into and hearing from companies and people that were already doing this, those cutting edge, bleeding edge companies and folks, thought leaders within the AI sphere. And we started really learning. So over the time, so fast forward now, we have a dedicated person that is now looking at where Campminder needed to be in the future of AI and really where we needed to be come to enable everyone in the company, starting with our technology organization, to be able to really embrace that. So when we were looking at operationalizing AI, knowing that it would scale eventually, but that, again, based on the challenge of not having a fully staffed product team at that time, they were actively hiring and onboarding folks to get them there, and not a clear vision or strategy from our senior leadership team, we knew that we needed to get a head start on our AI journey, even if it wasn't at that time coming from the quote unquote top down. So we decided to employ the scientific method. Many of you may are used to that. We literally used these areas here. So we asked the question first. We researched that question in a reasonable amount of time. Sometimes we time boxed that research. We formed a hypothesis. In this case, we tagged everything around our experimentation around savings. And that savings could be in the form of time, money, or efficiency. Think about context switching, things that normally could have been automated that weren't. So we anchored all of our hypotheses around whether or not there would be a perceived and a real savings around there. Then, of course, we tested that hypothesis, and then we analyzed data, drew conclusions, and then we communicated those results. So for those of you who may be operating in an R&D role, or if you have dedicated growth and innovation time or training time, the scientific method is a tried and true approach for us to really get to that point where we have a proven and repeatable way to be able to bring in hypotheses, experiment quickly, and then be able to deliver and communicate those results. So this scientific method really worked well for us over the first 6 months as we were exploring where we wanted to be and what we needed to do and future-proof ourselves within our AI journey. So next thing that we did is that we reported on that success. We started out with experimentation, almost like a mini hackathon, where we talked with other organizations outside of our technology organization and understood what some of the challenges that they were experiencing, where we believed that an AI approach, specifically around tooling, might be able to help solve those challenges. So we created that partnership based off of needs for teams and individuals outside of our technology organization. We knew that without having our product team fully staffed, that we would likely not be able to deliver external consumable solutioning around AI for our users, but we knew that we could develop an internal delivery team by partnering with internal organizations like our customer support or our customer success teams. So we started working on a couple of items for them that were low-hanging fruit, low risk, but that were high value and high return for those individuals. And once we had that success, again, by following the scientific method, we used existing company forums to push that info out. In some cases, we would have a weekly all hands for about 15 minutes a week, where we would give a 30-second overview of the things that were going on to generate interest. We also used existing Slack channels that had a far reach, both inside technology and outside to the entire company. We continued to partner with those advocates, again, starting with our customer support, our customer success team, our finance, our sales teams, and even in our people and culture or HR teams. We started partnering with advocates to deliver those low-hanging fruit or low-risk solutions, but high value. And then we asked those that we helped to start spreading the word about what we were doing. So we created a buzz in technology, and we did that by then, once we had enough areas of value and solutions that we were able to deliver or that were close to being able to deliver, we created an opt-in AI demo Fridays. We used one announcement. Folks could look at what was on deck to demo for that week, and if that was something that was appealing and interesting to them, they can always opt into that. And for those of you who are looking to evangelize or spread the word of either AI areas that you are exploring or other areas of interest around technology, I would certainly recommend using that opt-in demo or opt-in time so that we don't flood folks' calendars with meetings if they don't need to. So we really kind of push that opt-in demo Fridays. And then we utilized growth and innovation time. And this really was one of those areas that we were really fortunate to have been able to tap into. So in our organization in technology, about 20 months ago, I started with Campminder almost 2 years ago now. So within the first 3 to 4 months as a technology leader, we started looking at whether or not growth and innovation time was something that was dedicated to individuals within our technology organization. And what we found was that it was, but it really wasn't managed. And in a lot of cases, growth and innovation time became something more secondary, or only when they felt like they had time and all of their project work was complete, then would they start looking at growth and innovation time. What we did about 20 months ago was to really establish our capacity, and we divided those up into what is a typical capacity for an engineer, a test engineer, a software engineer, an architect, a platform engineer, a data engineer, and what was the right percentage that we could dedicate to project work or delivery team work within our Agile delivery teams. And more importantly, what was that percentage where we could really dedicate to growth and innovation time? And depending on the person, sometimes that growth and innovation time was managed with that person and their manager to maybe upskill them, or for folks who were exploring possible promotions, we used some of that growth and innovation time together and collaboratively. Others decided to use their growth and innovation time independently, where they would perhaps mark off time on their calendar to dedicate to whatever their percentage of growth and innovation time was. And then other delivery teams decided to manage growth and innovation time at a delivery team level, where some teams decided that they would perhaps use a half a day altogether and as a group or as a team work on growth and innovation. We knew that we had growth and innovation time built into all of our individual engineers within technology, but again, there wasn't a lot of consistency. So we knew that that was an area that we perhaps could really use as we started seeing the value, again, following the scientific method, being able to report on those, partnering with our advocates across the company. We knew that we had that time, and we started formalizing that within what we called the lab. So what I'm going to go over a little bit here is kind of the lab and crowd approach that we employed then and that we still employ within our company. I also, these slides will be available for you in case you're wondering that. We really took a lot of our approach initially from Ethan Mollick. If for those of you who have been doing some deep research, he is one of the thought leaders, forefronts around AI, and specifically around the culture around AI and how companies can enable AI within themselves, and kind of starting with a culture change. So we adopted the terms lab and crowd approach, which I'll walk through again. So really, you're looking now at a 6-month journey from about 2 years ago. The first 6 months or so was really that team of one, looking at successes, partnering, evangelizing those successes across the organization, and creating that buzz. Now we tapped into that growth and innovation time in technology that we had, created this lab and crowd approach. So what is the lab? Really, the best way to think about the lab is that this is the dedicated capacity. Each person in the lab were nominated, or in some cases handpicked by their manager, and they were representative of all of the practices or roles that we had within technology at that time. So we had an architect representative, we had a test engineer, we had a software engineer, we had a platform and data engineer, we had others that were in the lab. And the idea is that, again, because we knew we had dedicated capacity, we knew exactly how much capacity we could start using within the lab without impacting delivery work. And as always, things may change depending on seasonality. Campminder, we have our seasonality is really during the summer, where most day camps or overnight camps are really active. So we knew that during the summer, we may need to throttle back that capacity, but every week or 2 weeks, we checked in with everybody within the lab to ensure that we understood what their capacity was for either that week or the next 2 weeks. So we created this lab with dedicated time and, again, using their capacity, as well as partnering with their manager to make sure that their manager was also supporting their capacity towards lab time. And we were able to really work in a lot of ways in a pivot as soon as capacity needed to go down for other higher priority issues, or if we could actually have the luxury of increasing it over the 1 to 2 weeks. So we really got used to understanding the capacity and what we could commit to as we started developing a backlog of work that were based off of internal organizations to the company at that time. So managers nominated those folks. They were representative across all roles within our technology organization. And some of the expectations for members of the lab is that they were then the conduit or the forum to both share information from the lab back to their team or their practice that they were coming from, in the form of either one-on-ones with their manager, one-on-ones with their other teammates, or team meetings, and also bring in questions or topics from their team into the lab. So we created forums of communication that those expectations were set up once we had the kickoff for the lab, so that folks understood that their growth and innovation time, as well as expectations of communication and sharing that out, were all part of being part of this dedicated lab that we've again kind of had this in place for almost a year now, where we've had this dedicated capacity called the lab. It really was also a knowledge and experience incubator. What we were doing first, before we even started solutioning, was really share best practices. We heard how individuals were using AI on their day-to-day, and then we started striking a balance and a collaborative forum so that folks could share their thoughts and experiences on tools, approaches, terms like vibe coding, which, again, if you're familiar with some of our thought leadership and folks, vibe coding is one of those buzzwords that really kind of take a lot of interest and a lot of fun to work with there. But there were a lot of things that were coming out that had the potential to disrupt, in a very good way, organizations and companies. And what we wanted to make sure is that we created a forum in which to share, but that we also struck the balance between sharing and also being compliant around the ethical use of our AI tooling. And I'll share a little bit about how what we came up with to strike that balance between experimentation and sharing in forums, but also accountability on when a decision or when an agreement was made from those sharing collaboration forums, that we had a way to easily push that out and communicate widely, and then enable folks or teams for something that we were recommending. So the lab really became that dedicated R&D engine. In addition, as I mentioned, because we were getting a lot of interest generated from our first person, our team of one who was working with these organizations outside of technology, we knew that we would be able to become a delivery team. And by always striking the balance of what the capacity was for that 1 to 2 weeks, we were able to pull in work that was both prioritized and from our other partners in support and success. And we were able to deliver on a timeline that didn't tax the people in the lab, because, again, we were almost always asking about capacity and striking that balance there. And then really probably what we evolved into from the lab that was really pivotal is that this was flexible membership. As I mentioned, some folks' capacity in some cases, depending on their role and perhaps issues that we were experiencing during seasonality load, is that their capacity may have been down to 0 in some cases, in which case that they could still participate and hear and share as their schedule allowed, but that we wouldn't necessarily have them part of committing to delivery in some of these shorter, low-hanging fruit solutions that we were looking at. And in some cases, again, we could throttle up capacity when seasonality flexed down, and that we could take longer duration solutioning in there. So we were able to really tap into both the priority that the requester was asking, as well as tapping into our capacity. And it was really important for us to be able to strike the balance so that participation in the lab was looked at as a career enhancer. It was something that was important, and eventually became very important to the company as we walked through the rest of our journey. So now we've talked a little bit about the lab. Let's talk about the crowd. Really, the crowd is everyone else in the company. We really embraced grassroots AI empowerment. Again, we very much encouraged folks to experiment and to research AI tooling that met criteria for either their own individual productivity, day-to-day productivity AI tooling, or in some cases that were tapped into their role at the company. And so we were very flexible and instilled a culture where experimentation individually was welcome. The only thing that we asked is that anyone that was looking at AI tools, and especially if they were using them within the working day at the company, is that they would just let us know so that we could begin an inventory of tools that were in use. So that grassroots AI empowerment was really the catalyst to get folks really engaged and excited about that, because it didn't become prescriptive or mandated. It became flexible, and we allowed them to really take it on themselves and experiment in a safe way and share their results that they were coming up with. It also unleashed creativity. Again, experimentation really encourages this. By loosening guidelines on this experimentation, folks felt like they were empowered and had the control on how much or how little AI experimentation they were comfortable doing or using at that point. And we always had the opportunity to partner up with our one person in the lab or the one person who was leading this initiative via office hours. They could always join in specific times during the week that were dedicated for consulting hours or guideline hours in there. And what that really became was we democratized innovation. So innovation no longer, or technology innovation no longer belonged to our technology organization. This became an all company innovation way. And so in that case, we really democratized that. And for folks who perhaps had a perception that AI really only belonged to our technology leadership, and that technology leadership would let the rest of the company know when we were ready, we told everybody to start preparing for themselves, and we'll guide and provide some short and partnership opportunities to help get them started. So now that we had around a 6 to 9 month journey, and now we moved into a whole year of kind of operating under that approach. So now we fast forward to about a year ago or so. We saw the importance. We saw so much of the success around here, and we knew that it was inevitable that our senior leadership team and our product organization would be in a steady state and hired up with their product staff to start enabling AI functionality externally consumable by our users via our delivery teams, and that our SLT team was, and our senior leadership team and our CEO and president were really looking at the future there. So we were able to pave the way and provide an approach even before those mandates or company goals came through. So we needed to get the word out. So again, as we were waiting, and as our product organization was staffing and onboarding their new product managers and folks that would help put that product flair on what we were delivering, we became that internal delivery team. And we really did that, again, to avoid FOMO, fear of missing out. We knew that other companies, and specifically other competitors of ours, were already starting their AI journey. And we didn't want to wait for a mandate from above to give us the go-ahead to do that. We started doing that in a slow and consistent way that we knew would meet the needs eventually of when this became a true company goal and an initiative that we want to be able to have accountability across everyone in the company. We also did that to build muscle memory. So again, we started out with lower risk, kind of lower hanging fruit items, but that were high value. But because we were not delivering those into a production environment for consumption from our users, we knew that we had a higher risk tolerance for things like that, but it built the muscle memory for this lab to think of different ways on how to engage as a team. Maybe there were some areas that might have been a little too process heavy that would normally follow a traditional delivery team. And the lab team was really able to strike the balance between developing engineering principles that would guide how we approached our work within the AI culture, as well as understanding and learning where areas that we might be able to apply to more traditional delivery teams. And again, flexing of the capacity of folks each week. This was the biggest lesson learned. Again, when we started out, I think, certainly from my standpoint, I assumed that one's capacity would be pretty steady state for about 1 to 3 months. That, of course, wound up not being true. So we increased the recurrence of checking in on capacity because we saw indicators that folks' capacity really did flex over 2 weeks versus 1 to 3 months of our original assumption there. So now that we've operationalized, we have the lab working, they're developing that delivery team muscle, and they're providing feedback and clarity on how we can better support delivery teams in their own AI journey. We started taking this out wide to the company, and we did that by developing the AI Roadshow. So first of all, the crux of the AI Roadshow is that it went out to all departments or organizations. So me being the leader of our technology ops and enablement, specifically the AI practice here, I worked with each of the leaders and got on their calendar and scheduled time to talk about an overview of what we had been doing for the last year in this AI lab. What come to find out is that not a lot of the information that we were pushing out in some of these communication forums was really being digested by folks. And we realized that they probably knew an AI lab existed, but that's really the extent of a lot of their information or understanding of that. So we took time to really structure this AI Roadshow that applied to all of our organizations, and we talked about what we had done so far. We also gave them information on how they can explore the experiments that we were doing, how our culture and approach was, and we started giving them information that they could review on their own. And then more specifically, we tied that to how they could make a request to engage with somebody from our AI lab to help partner and further along, whether that was getting them up to a baseline AI literacy or to help them in more expert types of ways by looking at specific tooling for our software engineers or architects. Then we asked them to share how they were currently using AI. And when we did that, they were really talking about tools that they were either using or that they were curious about, that they had heard might be able to help within their role, using their own community or network. So we actually used the tooling share to help us inventory a list of all AI tools that were being used within the company confines. And that really helped for us to be able to justify and get investment on budget for tooling, because that became a point as our senior leadership team became more and more curious and they knew that we wanted to become an AI forward company. That declaration really didn't happen for about a year after this point in our journey. So again, we were paving the way. We knew it would come eventually, and we were doing all of the things to get the point where when the senior leadership team made that decision where we would become a more AI forward company, that everything, all the groundwork was laid, and that was then simply plug and play into what was already existing in here. So what wound up happening is, because we had heard across the organizations, which therefore equaled all company, which tools were in use, and we were able to quickly map tooling that were being used from organization to organization where their roles were not necessarily working together on the day-to-day. So that allowed us to justify getting more enterprise-wide licensing around tools that we saw that there was a lot of adoption in there. So that was the beginning to understand which tools should we be looking at and which tools is the company willing to invest in at that enterprise level. Then the third point of those roadshows is that we started actually building their AI roadmap or backlog. We asked the question, there was a little bit of prep work that we asked the attendees to do before the roadshow, but we really kind of on the fly in real time, within a day after those roadshows, we were able to quickly put in those items into where we track some of our initial thoughts and ideas for eventual delivery. We did plug in the delivery work into ADO. That is our tool that we use for our SDLC delivery cycles. But we started capturing and centralizing those backlog items, and then we made those very centralized and visible to the rest of the company. And then we began planning how we would engage with those leaders or with those individual organizations and departments from the roadshow over the next 6 months. And then what we did is we revisited about every quarter to 6 months to make sure that those original backlog items that they had identified over the last year were still relevant. And then we asked them to reprioritize if that was applicable. So this kept our organizations that were not necessarily thinking about AI forward like our technology folks were. It kept them warm, and it kept them thinking about that by natural and more digestible recurrences like every quarter or so that they were getting touch points on that. And then from there, we actually assisted a couple of organizations to create their own lab that looked like ours, with giving them kind of the tools and the guidance, and also that dedicated person to help get them start up so that they could begin their own journey around exploring AI tooling and approaches that fit the need for their role. As you remember, this was really a team of one. This engineer was a traditional software engineer who started this out in this role, but this person did not have expertise in, say, sales tooling or support or success. So we wanted to do, and that's where that enablement portion of our department comes in. We operationalized something, again, that was centralized and repeatable and consistent, and then we enabled individuals or teams so that they could take on the responsibility and the accountability on their own with guidance only, or in some cases, some hands-on work at the minimal. So we had very little dependency on that one person because they were enabled with a bespoke plan, and we were able to build in ramping down the touch points that engineer had with those organizations to level them up with their own AI literacy so that we could continue to focus with a very small capacity with this person on future proofing and really tapping in to those areas of heavy R&D and research of what was going on in the very ever changing and very quickly changing industry of AI. So,
Hey, Melissa, would
yes,
you like to take a few questions right now?
of
Yeah.
course, yes, please.
Sorry to bother you in between, but yeah. So this is a question from Sandeep. I'll just share it here on the screen also for people. Hello, Melissa. You mentioned about starting with low-hanging fruits. So he has two parts to this question. One is what exactly are those low-hanging fruits, if you could spell them out, categorically
Yeah.
speaking. And what type of AI, Gen AI, LLM you and your team started with? So those are the two subparts to his question.
Great questions. Yeah. So the low hanging fruit, it was actually it was actually an agentic. It was an agent. It was a search agent that we first thing that was our first deliverable within our AI lab team, and that was an internal search for our customer support and customer success folks. So that was the first deliverable. Again, that was something that they were spending a lot of time doing more manually on their search. We built that for them so that their search then became very much AI enabled. At the time, we were using ChatGPT. That was the enterprise-wide licenses that we had employed. Since then, and especially for our software engineers, we have started experimenting and have purchased licenses for certain groups of people around Claude Code. We're using Cursor and other tooling like that. But for the MMP that we were using was via our ChatGPT. Great question.
Got it. Yeah. This is from Ishan. I'll share on stream again.
Oh, yep.
Uh,
The question.
this is from Ishan. To what extent the lab and buzz created around AI tooling help in, let's say, the overall productivity or some other metric which you were mentioning at that point of time? And release velocity by what percentage in how much time considering sessions weren't funded in the AOP?
So, great question. So, as you know, mentioned, we knew that there was some sort of savings that would be a very appealing measurement to put in place. We were either saving time or money, or it was an efficiency gain. So these experiments, in the example of what we just delivered, this kind of internal AI agent search, we knew what before we even started solutioning, we used our scientific method and we put our hypothesis on how much time, in this case, we would save of an individual in there. And we actually used that to track. What wound up coming out of that is a full dashboard of all of our AI experiments. And at this point, there's probably close to 70 or so experiments that we have put in place, either individual experiments that benefited one person or their team or role or practice, or across the company in there. So we garnered the investment and kind of the buzz throughout by actually showing the savings with what that solution did. So for example, in that case, I'll kind of pull out an arbitrary number. Perhaps that search was costing an individual support person 7 hours a week. By implementing this solution, we were able to get that down to 30 minutes a week, right? So we were able to clearly tie the cost savings around there. And then, and again, if you've ever heard me speak around efficiencies, this is something that I'm very passionate about. What we did from there is when we realized that time savings, we worked with the leadership to say, hey, we built a solution that is saving your individual people on the team about 6.5 hours a week. What is something that you would like to replace that time with that's meaningful to you, either within the AI sphere or something else that you haven't had time to do? So there was always that we will present the cost or the savings associated with that solution, and the leadership of that organization would then be able to use that savings to to advance their own organization with goals or areas that they just previously didn't have the time to do. Great.
Got it. There's another question. I think let's take that also. This is from Ganesh Iyer, who says, "Hi Melissa, what has been the improvement in productivity?" Which I think you have answered. But this is an important piece. How do we temper the fear of reduction of workforce as now AI was in place? It's such a common fear, right, in people's mind in these days, right?
Yep.
Also, how much of this had been no code, or was it an enabler to help improve testing efficiency and productivity?
This is a great question, and I think part of how I answered the previous question would probably help
Yeah,
there of how we
correct.
got there. But and again, if you've ever heard me speak or talk or read anything, I am one of the quotes that kind of follows all of the content that I speak and write on is that we are technologists, and technologists should not only be early adopters of technology like AI and especially disruptive like AI, but we should be embracing those. In my world, I don't see AI necessarily replacing humans. For those of you who may be in your career in testing for as long as I have, the onset of commercial automation tools 20 to 25 years ago, there was also a lot of fear around, well, if we automated all of our testing, then that would mean that there would be human testers that would be out of a job. The way that we should really be looking at this is that any type of disruptor of technology, specifically in AI, is able to get us to the point where it can automate at a high rate of speed things that we would normally be doing in a repetitive manner. Just apply that same thing to test automation, what that did to great testers. That means that that human tester can actually look at valuable areas for them to be spending their time that really only humans should be doing. Advocacy for users that are going to be consuming our software. There's a list of things that really humans should be applying their brain to do. And by being early adopters and embracers of disruptive technologies like this, we can tap into that to make some of those repetitive tasks that keep us away from being able to really explore code. And I'm talking about the testing sphere here. That is really how we present and embrace AI here, not as a replacement for people. However, I will say that if you haven't already started your own AI journey and embracing and being at the forefront, regardless of your role, if you're a tester, if you're in product, if you're a project manager, if you're a developer, there are ways that you can and should already be plugged into how to use AI for your own personal productivity so that you can actually replace that time with more meaningful and more valuable, or in a lot of cases, services or areas of opportunity that you previously didn't have the time to do except on your own time outside of the company. So we're constantly looking at hyper efficiency here, but not just to reduce time or cost, but to also replace that with more meaningful and better and more valuable work. Great, thank you. So I'm going to kind of quickly go through. I just want to make sure that we've got some time to go through. So here are things that we did, lessons learned in here. Here are things that were really meaningful in our AI journey that we put in place. First being the AI usage policy. We knew that because we had opened up and encouraged a culture of experimentation across the company, we also knew that that might introduce some sort of liability around bringing in tooling that may not have been vetted around. So we partnered with our chief security officer to ensure that anyone who was looking at tools followed our SOC 2 compliance vendor guideline, the same that we would apply for any other tool that we would be looking at bringing into our company. It didn't change that. And then we wrote what I would call an extremely comprehensive but flexible AI usage policy that became, and that actually had safety, ethical, and productivity as the foundation of what that usage policy was able to do. So we encouraged experimentation, but we provided the guidelines within our AI usage policy so that we could ensure that it was following our guidelines that were already in place, bringing in new tooling into the company. It allowed us to support that experimentation, which was so fundamental to the culture of AI forward that we were building, while also establishing the compliancy in those tooling uses. And then what we moved to was that all team members acknowledged that AI usage policy every 6 months, and that it's built into onboarding all new team members. So anytime we bring in a new team member into the company, the AI usage policy is part of their onboarding, the same way that it would be for any other fundamental tooling that either HR or IT takes for new employees or new team members in there. The next thing that we did, which in my opinion was a game changer and what I think has been really a pivotal moment, we just rolled this out very recently, but it was our AI literacy assessment. This assessment was self-reporting. So we roll this out, and it really covers our company specific AI knowledge management, where to go, where do you find this information, what tools do you have available to you right now? Right now, ChatGPT is a license that anyone within our company has. And then we show those for anything that where the company is paying for those licenses, we put a little bit more emphasis on their use and have specific and more detailed information on how to use that. But the umbrella of the AI usage policy really covers us from more ethical use across the board, and again, encourages that experimentation for folks who are who take that path of researching and experimenting on their own. Some of the other areas that this literacy assessment covers is also tools that we may also support, but also tools that are in play within the company and what their usages are. Context, agentics, MCPs. These are some of the units within this literacy assessment that we've created. And the idea behind this, the AI literacy assessment, is that this allows everybody to self-report and self-manage their own AI literacy, which is to prepare us for what has then become and will become our company goal for our fiscal year. Our fiscal year starts September 1, so that's only a few weeks away. So this current AI literacy assessment is being taken by everyone within the company. And if there are any gaps, they have the opportunity, or their manager has the opportunity, to plug in and get those gaps. So the literacy assessment will become mandatory for everyone in the company and every new person in the company. And so we will get everyone to that baseline level, so that then from there, then their more bespoke type of AI enablement and forward will then be defined by the leadership of their organization and associated with their role within the company, which is exactly where it should be, so that it doesn't become a centralized function only within technology, but that we create those forums to help leaders outside of technology enable and support their own folks by that starting off point with that literacy assessment, that baseline assessment. So now, the senior leadership is now bought in. They and we have been working on our company goal, which again will be put in place September 1, the beginning of our fiscal year. And we had the ability over the last 2 years, and specifically over the last year when we assembled the lab and started more group experimentation, we had the ability to lay that groundwork for what we knew was inevitable. We knew that at some point in time, our senior leadership team was going to make this a first-class goal and initiative for the company. We wanted to pave the way so that when that time finally came, as it has, that we already had that groundwork laid. And the goal really ensures by putting this as a company goal, and we have other company goals that have nothing to do with AI forward, but by putting it at the company goal, it ensures that all team members are embracing the AI forward approach within their role. And that really means that we're intentionally integrating AI throughout, not just as a tool, but as a strategic capability, and in some cases, a culture shift. So we have many examples of how we've done this within our SDLC by building playbooks around, say, some of our agile ceremonies like refinement. We put prompting questions in there of, is this something that we should in AI enable? For example, structuring user stories with acceptance criteria. We built custom GPTs to be able to make those frameworks really easy and transferable so that we had consistent understanding of requirements and acceptance criteria that were consistent across team to team. So now that we've operationalized and enabled, we now have that dashboard that shows the savings for each AI deliverable. For the question that asked about that, it's very clear. We reference that a lot of times, anytime that we're speaking to organizations or throughout the company. And that is a real-time dashboard that shows either the cost, the efficiency, or the time savings for each of our AI deliverable. That is fundamental. For experimentation and delivery, for us to really have gotten the investment and the importance of this as a company goal, we really needed to prove the savings and specifically following that scientific method around hypothesizing. We still use the scientific method in the lab, and that is really something that we are now contemplating taking out to our delivery teams as a way for them to also formulate work within their team and maybe disrupt the traditional way of how requirements come into a team, and perhaps applying the scientific method to encourage experimentation and to fail early and often, as long as it's in a low risk type of area. So we don't embark on solutioning unless it can be measured. And again, we go back to that fundamental metric at this point, which is savings. Which savings do we believe will happen? And did our results actually prove that? And we are actively delivering on internal items, even when our capacity flexes. As I mentioned, we're seasonal. Summer is a very busy time here. Our capacity in the lab did decrease significantly, but that did not cause a stoppage within our lab. It just informed us of what things we could or should actually be taking on. So our next phase for AI literacy, as I mentioned, now it's leader defined. So in our next fiscal year, our leaders of those organizations will now start defining their own AI literacy based on their roles and organizational leads. And we, our AI ops and enablement function, will be able to partner with them in lower touch ways because we've already enabled them to do that on themselves. We're an equitable partner with our leaders. And the team of one, that person is still here. They're actually spending the time not only within the lab and delivering solutions, but they also have that dedicated time to look forward and being that cutting edge space and help us continue to be on that forefront to set us apart from our competitors and to also be a highly technologically innovative and AI forward company and organization. So that is it for me for right now. I think I can spend a couple minutes for questions if there are any. As I mentioned, I'm happy to share the slide deck, and it has all of my contact information there for those of you who may want to expand or extend the conversation out one-on-one. So,
sure, yeah. I think most of the questions we covered during the session itself. I'll wait for a few more seconds if people have any more questions. In the meantime, folks, if you my team will drop a feedback link. I would request you to please fill the feedback form. I think Melissa and us both the parties need the feedback so that we know where to improve and we also give a pat on our backs, right? Where we were good. So in that sense, yeah. So please give the feedback and we'll be happy to have you. I think there are no more questions. I think people here in India are at about 10:30. People in in North America are in the middle of their lunch timing or in their work. So I think they're not spending too much of time here. Thank you so much for this, Melissa. Thank you for always being so kind to agree to our request to speak. And it's such an important and such a, while everybody's trying to operationalize AI in their way, but giving such a good framework around operationalizing AI, I think this will help a lot of people in general. Thank you so much.
Agree. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll now move you to backstage, and I'll do some closing notes here. Thank you. Thank you, Melissa.
Okay.
Thank you, folks. Before all of you sign off, we have one more video to play from BrowserStack about their latest capabilities. So I'll quickly play this. And if you need any help from BrowserStack standpoint, there is that stream.
Now brings specialized BrowserStack AI agents straight into your IDE, turning Copilot, Cursor, or Claude into full-stack testing powerhouses. Now with Test Case Generator Agent, no more hours spent analyzing requirements and writing test cases manually. AI will generate context-aware test cases by analyzing PRDs within seconds. Let's say I want to write test cases for this login functionality PRD and organize them into folders in BrowserStack Test Management. Let me ask Copilot to use the Test Case Generator Agent and generate relevant test cases in Test Management. The Copilot is checking if I already have a project in Test Management for this. Let's write a prompt to create a new project for the login flow. It is now generating the relevant test cases. Just like that, it has generated 57 detailed test cases for 11 scenarios. Let's have a look at another agent, the BrowserStack low-code authoring agent, which can instantly convert manual test cases written in natural language to low-code automated tests. Let's ask Copilot to use BrowserStack AI and generate an automated low-code test for one of the test cases. It understands the context from the test case and uses the low-code authoring agent to automatically create an automated low-code test. And my test is automated. Let's see it running on BrowserStack low-code automation. And just like that, from PRD to automated tests, end-to-end testing is made easier with BrowserStack AI. Let's now look at the self-healing agent, which detects broken locators during test execution and auto-fixes them on the fly. We will execute this UI test that you can see on the screen. Let's ask the Copilot. The test has passed, but it says that it was self-healed. Oh, one of my CSS locators had failed. The self-healing agent fixed it on the fly, or else my build would have failed. Sweet. Let's ask the Copilot to fix this code. It needs to know the session ID of the failed execution to fix my broken locators. Let's recheck if the test is still flaky. So simple. With BrowserStack self-healing AI agent and the MCP server, I can detect and fix flaky tests on the fly and correct the code effortlessly. BrowserStack MCP server is open source and available now on GitHub. Explore it today and realize the power of BrowserStack AI agents. Thanks for watching and happy testing.
And that's it, folks. Thank you so much for joining in, and thank you for staying till the end. And if you need any help from Melissa, we'll share her LinkedIn profile links to you after this call. And if you need any help for this POC, for this demo which we just did, please feel free to poll yes in the chat, and I'll reach out to you. Thank you so much.